Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Pebble Beach Pro-Am Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into, a lot of exciting research to unpack and cipher through. So let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. This is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler, a much better DFS player. There are a lot of great tools out there, don't get me wrong. I just simply believe Fantasy National is the best, and they are working on a special project, so now is a fantastic time to become a member at Fantasy National. So go check them out. It's completely worth your investment. In the description of the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter and Instagram. I posted some research to both places today. Twitter is the summary of the research that happened this morning over on Twitch. And then Instagram is more than 140 characters, so I could expound on it a little bit, but saved some of it as well for tonight. So if you want to see the research, or at least a summary of the research that I do in the mornings, give me a follow at those two places. But if you want to see the research in its entirety, give me a follow over at Twitch, which that link is also in the description. And Twitter is where I post my betting cards for the week. I certainly fired off quite a few wagers this morning. When the odds came out, there were quite a few names that I was intrigued by. After having a pretty shallow card last week, the itch was scratching, and so fired off quite a few wagers. So if you want to see my betting card, that will be out Wednesday evening over on Twitter after the DFS Tactics show. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. Have you posted or made any wagers for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am so far? What are you looking toward in terms of analysis? Where do you think a lot of the success comes at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am? All of that good stuff. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And we're going to start over at Fantasy National. And you see, I went ahead and set this for the beginning of 2022, which means we're going to take a look at some filters that just don't have enough rounds only back to the start of the PGA Tour season. And there is one common theme among all, well, there's a couple of common themes among all three courses, but all three courses barely reach 7,000 yards if they do it all. So we're going to take a look at a lot of short course metrics tonight. So since the start of 2022, your top performers on short courses have been Seamus Power, Ben Griffin, Andrew Putnam, Denny McCarthy, Maverick McNeely, Eric Van Rooyen, Matt Kuchar, Keith Mitchell, Matt Fitzpatrick, Thomas Detry, and Lonto Griffin. Looks like, yeah, the Farmers was already in the database last night, so this list won't change, and any of the review from last night shouldn't change as well. But all three courses are right at 7,000 yards, if not shorter. So going to be a big factor this week, performance on short courses. I had meant to bring up Windfinder. I do not have it up at the moment, but Thursday looks like it could have some hectic winds in the afternoon. And then Sunday and Monday, shoot, I'm clicking course length instead of wind. Sunday and Monday look to be havoc. And especially if the forecast changes to where Monday is brought in to Sunday and Sunday to Saturday and so on, then wind's going to be a big factor as well. So your top wind players in 2022 plus January 2023 have been Tom Hoge, Scott Piercy, Jordan Spieth, Matt Kuchar, Keith Mitchell, Brandon Wu, Denny McCarthy, Victor Hovland, and Taylor Pendrith. So again, we will take a pretty long look at that on Wednesday evening for the DFS Tactics show. We also looked at Windfinder early this morning over on Twitch for the research purposes, but there does appear to be some wind in the forecast, so you're definitely going to want to have some wind consideration in your analysis early on in the week. Let's see. And because of the wind, or the forecast of wind, I am very, very hesitant to put anything in regards to scoring relative to par. We saw last year anywhere between the three ranges, and that was when it was calm, moderate. Spyglass Hill played difficult in moderate wind. Pebble Beach played difficult in moderate wind. But then in round 4, it was easy in the same moderate wind at Pebble Beach. So I'm very hesitant to do anything with a scoring filter this week. And that is why I led the show off with the less than 7,200 filter. That's just going to be the filter for the majority of the metrics we look at this week. Because of no scoring relative to par, let's take a long look at some putting. So we know we are on bent greens, we know we're on POA greens for all 3 courses. So we don't have nearly enough rounds dating back to just 2022. Last time we went all the way to 2020. This is the one time I'm actually going to bring in every single record in terms of POA and fast. I mean, well, let me add the fast filter. So on fast POA greens, you're going to see there really isn't a whole ton. I mean, 93 is a lot. JB Holmes dates back to, the 2000 aughts. But very quickly you get into the, the 30s for some of these players. POA is just not a very common surface. And you see there are still some players with less than 10 rounds. So this is a player's career performance on POA, fast POA specifically. And that will give you a big hint or big inclination at a lot of the research that was done on camera early this morning, and then afterwards, after lunch, what I've done on my own time. Your top POA your top fast green or fast speed POA green putters in the entirety of their career. There is no timeline here, just a full-on career look. Your top fast speed POA green putters: Aaron Baddeley, Jonas Blixt, Matt Kuchar, Kevin Kisner, Zach Blair, Maverick McNeely, Jimmy Walker, Michael Kim, Denny McCarthy, and Brian Stewart. Now, Jimmy Walker is a former champion here at this event in 2014. Spieth won in 2017. Nick Taylor, we've talked about, he won in 2019. So there are a lot of crossover between the players that you see rising up here at the top of this rankings for career POA putting and success here at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, especially since all 3 courses, remember, have POA greens. So POA putting is going to be a huge facet of consideration this week. And while I have the two specific filters and talking about POA putting, I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to the putting tab. And even though 3 putts on these greens are slightly less than the average tour event, the fact that these greens are the smallest on tour, at least over at Pebble Beach they are, shows you the fact that 3 putts are fairly common. These greens are not easy to read. They're pretty slopey. And again, fast POA is just difficult to putt on. So I want to see who the top 3 putt avoiders are on fast POA greens. That was one of the big reasons why I was so high on Hideki and Colin Morikawa last week. I am not sure I'm going to have 3 putt avoidance in the final mixed condition model. So I definitely want to look at this tonight and bring it to your attention. So your top 10 3 putt avoiders on fast POA greens in their career, no timeline, in their career, have been Aaron Baddeley, Jonas Blixt, Kevin Kisner, Luke Donald, Kevin Tway, Kelly Craft, Matt Kuchar, Jordan Spieth, Brian Stewart, and J.J. Henry. So a lot of similar names, but some new names in here as well. Aaron Baddeley, I believe, was the number 1 putt. Yeah, so we can just look across here. Strokes gained putting, number 1. 3 putt avoidance, number 1 for Aaron Baddeley. The biggest riser actually is J.J. Henry. He is not a very good putter in terms of in totality on fast POA greens, but he is number 10 on 3 putt avoidance. Kevin Tway makes a significant rise in focusing on just on 3 putt avoidance versus total putting. Otherwise, most of these guys are pretty darn good. Luke Donald sits just outside the top 10 in total. He's 4th in 3 putt avoidance. Jordan Spieth 11th. Most of these guys are indeed in the top 10 in total putting. A lot of that probably due to the fact that they don't 3 putt. So I definitely wanted to make you aware of that because I don't think there's going to be 3 putt avoidance in the final mixed condition model. So make sure you make a note of those players. Again, with these greens being so small, you wouldn't think that 3 putt avoidance would be a factor since they are almost as common as the average tour event tells you just the amount of propensity of 3 putts here at Pebble Beach. So with that, now I'm going to bring in the timeline, if you will. We're going to go to, let's go ahead and go to the full 2022. We're going to be looking at short courses. And let's take a look at some approach numbers, probably some greens, maybe even some around the green. So, your top strokes gained approach players since the start of 2022, specifically on short courses. Those players have been Matthew Neesmith, Russell Knox, Scott Stallings, Justin Lauer, Lonto Griffin, Kurt Kitayama, Lucas Glover, Ben Taylor, David Lipsky, and Jordan Spieth. None of those same 10 are top 10 in around the green. And around the green is certainly an important factor here with these greens being so small. Now, I don't think we want to take a look at around the green on short courses. So we'll take a look over here at the historic conditions. Rough length, generally average to short. So, no help really there since there's seemingly a pretty even split between the two. And with my hesitation to use anything in terms of difficult, we can take a look at around the green on POA greens, but I think the more apt thing is just to look at around the green in general. So since the start of 2022, your top strokes gained around the green players. Danny Willett, Matt Kuchar, Andrew Putnam, Bill Haas, Ben On, Jonathan Bird, William McGirt, Robbie Shelton, Luke Donald, and Scott Piercy. Jordan Spieth also very, very high here. Bo Van Pelt has actually played this event fairly well. Just outside the top 10. I believe Brendan Todd has played this event fairly well. He's number one in short game in 2022 plus January 2023. So it's going to be important to factor in some around the green as well this week. But let's get to the meat and potatoes, as they say. I'm going to remove our... there was no filter. Am I going to add the short course? Maybe. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that for the bogeys. So, just to get set up for when we want to come to this year's field. But let's take a look at some prior leaderboards and figure out what all has been going on here at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am the last few years. This is last year's leaderboard. We'll highlight, this is the top 15, convenient for ties. Again, we talked about it a little bit last night, like off the tee, for as low as that graph is, only one player was negative. So that either leads me to think that maybe it's good drives gained or greens. Spoiler alert, it's both of those probably. Approach, you had some pretty big numbers, but you had quite a few players that were negative. But you see all the putting here. And let me tell you from research today, the majority of these players up here are pretty darn good on POA putting, with the exception of Tom Hoge. He was a little bit of an outlier. But as I mentioned, I posted some research over on Twitter and on Instagram. So if you want to see that, give me a follow over there. And if you want to see the in-depth research, give me a follow over at Twitch, as that has all been posted today. But most of these players are pretty darn good on POA greens. Let's just kind of take a look here. 5.8 high, the highest in strokes gained approach. You got a 3.1. A little bit, a very loose correlation, and not too much at all, with a couple of miscuts this high. But you also have some strong performances right under them. And then putting, pretty darn strong. That's a look at the strokes gained tab. Let's go to birdies and better game. And last night we saw in Microsoft Excel how bogeys avoided was the bigger percentage for players that finished in the top 30. So last year, Tom Hoge, very good in both, but an astoundingly large number here in the birdies gained. He had to have led that. Oh, yeah. He ran away with it in terms of birdies gained. He's still very, very high in terms of the bogeys avoided as well. And you see the lack of eagles. I mean, there are a few to be had, but, I mean, there are so many missed cuts up here. It just doesn't lead to success. It is not a direct indicator of success here. So with that, we just sort on the birdies. Just kind of get a feel for some of the finishes here. Do you have your winner, third, couple of fourths? Okay. So it looks pretty top heavy, with really only Nate Lashley the only true middling finish. Whereas if we look at bogeys, it's about the same number. Not as top heavy, because you only have a first, a fourth, and then a ninth, as opposed to a third, another fourth. But you also have quite a few more middling finishes here. A couple of 28ths, a 33rd. So probably birdies gained when sorted. But again, just look at the top 15 here. And we'll even go down to the top 20. Can you see? That's the last name here, Mackenzie Hughes. So there's two more names down here for the top 23 in Lonto Griffin and Robert Garrigus, and they're the only two that are negative in terms of bogeys avoided. And look at the minuscule number there. 1/10 and 2/10 in the bogeys avoided. Whereas in the birdies gained, yeah, you still have the same amount of players that are negative, but quite a bit more in those negatives, 1.7 and 4.7. So I still think probably birdies gained from last year, although it is fairly close when you actually look at the leaderboard sorted. We will look at the top 20. This is pretty convenient just for ties. You have, look at this, another situation where you really don't have anybody truly negative. This is in red because it is slightly negative. It's getting rounded to 0. It is slightly negative. So really everybody was field average or better in bogeys avoided in 2021. Birdies gained was at 8.3. Now that is some very strong correlation. Not going to deny that. 8.3 the highest there, but you have a 9, and look at that correlation. That is some severe correlation. So 2021 really amplifying the fact that bogey avoidance is more important than birdies gained that year. And again, we'll look at 2020. This is the top 17. You have one player that's negative in the bogeys. It's J.B. Holmes. Let's see if we look 9.1. And look at there. Again, pretty strong correlation here in the birdies gained. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a 25 in the top 6. That's pretty good. Pretty good. And not nearly as much here in the bogey. So looking like it would be birdies gained 2 out of the 3 years, which is a little surprising considering what we saw from Microsoft Excel last night. I still think it's going to be bogey avoidance, but we'll take a look at all of them. So, because eagles do happen, let's take a look at birdies or better gained on short courses since the start of 2022. Those players are Seamus Power, Lonto Griffin, Ben Griffin, Justin Rose, Thomas Detry, Mav McNeely, Victor Hovland, Eric Van Rooyen, Jordan Spieth, and Carl Yuan. And if we sort on the bogeys avoided, well, you have Seamus Power, who's number 1 in bogey avoidance and in birdies or better gain. That's a pretty good combination to have there. Matt Kuchar is tied with Seamus Power for number 1 in bogey avoidance on short courses. And then Andrew Putnam, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ryan Armour, Thomas Detry, Ben Griffin, Joel Damon, Adam Long, and Eric Cole are your top 10 in terms of bogey avoiders on short courses. So really the only player that is completely out of line, complete outlier in terms of birdies or better and bogey avoidance and being good at both is Adam Long. He is a bogey avoider when it's short, but he certainly does not get birdies or better in bunches when it's short. And we'll sort on that one. Justin Rose, a little bit of an outlier as well. He is very good at birdies or better on short courses. He's not the best at avoiding bogeys on short courses. So if you have a strong inclination one way or the other, birdies are better gained versus bogeys avoided, use whichever rankings you prefer. I am still leaning towards bogey avoidance, but we'll see. And I've also brought up last year's mixed condition model that I used at Pebble Beach, so we can also take a look at that and see what I did at the end of the show. But there's a look at scoring chances and scoring on short courses. And again, like I mentioned last week in the mixed condition model, I did birdies are better gained on long courses because 3 of the 4 rounds were at Torrey Pines South. I normally don't like to mix a metric and a filter, but with my hesitation and my hesitancy to use a scoring or to say whether I think it's going to be easy or difficult, because I have really no idea with the wind projected to be what it is. This is probably another week where I'm going to be looking at bogey avoidance on short courses, more than likely. Let's move to driving statistics from some of these prior leaderboards. Again, this is the top 15, just due to ties. You see good drives gained. You really only had one player that was very poor in good drives. Now you had 3 that were negative in terms of greens and regulation. So it really wasn't fairways, it was the good drives in 2022 that seemingly led to your success. And if we sort on that good drives, yeah, you go all the way down to Hoagie. You do have one miscut in John Murphy, but some pretty decent success here. Nothing worse. Well, I was going to say nothing worse than a middling, but Ben Coles was a clunker of a made cut at 63rd. But you had some pretty solid performances in here. So, okay, 8.6 being the highest. Look at the lack of correlation here in fairways. You do have Pat Perez that was a top 10, but otherwise not a whole lot here. Greens, huge number and a lot more success, so maybe greens. I think we saw that last night in Microsoft Excel as well. It was more greens than the good drives. So let's check 2021, see if we're getting some of the same vibes from that year. Again, top 15 just due to ties. Now distance actually seemed like it was something that year. But again, these good drives, there were only 3 negative in good drives gained, only 2 negative in greens. Good drives was an 8.4. Pretty decent correlation here. Greens, oh my. Yikes. 3rd to 7th, 2nd, 1st, 5th, a couple more places down. Okay, greens 2 years in a row. P, welcome to the chat. Thanks for jumping in. How's your week started? Glad to have you. We've talked about your boy Luke Donald a little bit. He good around the green and has traditionally been pretty good at POA. So this might be a spot for old Uncle Luke. We'll have to see. But thanks for jumping in, chat. Hopefully you haven't missed too much of the show. Let's see. Sorry, something caught the corner of my eye there. Let's look at 2020. Again, it looks like it's been greens in regulation among the 2 stats that I am kind of debating between. This is the top 17 due to ties. Good drives, 4 were negative. 4 were negative in greens, but 2 were pretty darn close to field average. So good drives, a 7.5. Oh my, that is no correlation at all. Look at all the missed cuts up here in terms of good drives. Greens, oh, well, I guess it falls off fairly quickly. I mean, Sean O'Hara led with a 50th. That's a clunker, but then 2nd, 4th, 1st. Another top 20. So 3 straight years there of greens being the more dominant factor, and that's what you would probably think with all of these courses having anywhere from the smallest greens on tour to maybe slightly above average size greens and anywhere in between there. Let's take a look at some greens in regulation. Again, we're just going to keep the less than 7,200 or short course filter on until we get to the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. So let's take a look at greens in regulation on short courses. Your top players in with that metric on that filter since the start of 2022: Russell Knox, Matthew NeSmith, Seamus Power, Taylor Pendrith, Eric Van Rooyen, Joel Damon, Sean O'Hare, Andrew Putnam, Matthias Schwab, Kyle Stanley, and Victor Hovland. Note that basically all of these players are, okay to elite and anywhere in between in good drives gained. So perhaps by focusing just on greens, just the way it's shaking out, where it looks like we might be covering good drives gained as it is. And P, if you missed the intro, hopefully you'll have a chance to go back and watch it. But in quick summary, I am not going to be doing anything with scoring relative to par, especially tonight. The wind is chaotic. Not to say that it's difficult chaotic. It's just like Thursday there appears to be some wind in the afternoon. Sunday looks to have quite a bit of wind. Monday has a lot of wind. So if the forecast were to change and that wind moves into more of the tournament, I would imagine it would play more difficult. If it gets pushed back, it would play more easy. I just am not comfortable saying with any definitive confidence what the scoring is going to be or what I think it will be. So I'm just going to focus on what we do know for these three courses. They're all short. But there's a look at your top green in regulation game players on short courses. Let's take a quick look at the breakdown here. And let's see. Scrambling. Players are slightly less successful scrambling than the average true event. So I suppose it doesn't hurt to look at scrambling. For this, I don't think you want to look at scrambling on short courses. Again, I think I'm just going to look at scrambling in totality. The rough is anywhere from short to average. Perhaps you could look at scrambling on POA greens. Actually, that might not be too bad. Yeah, Uncle Luke, that's right. He's gotten a mention or two. This might be one time where scrambling on POA, because putting is a part of scrambling. Let's go ahead and just, like we did with POA putting, because there's so few rounds that are POA, specifically fast POA. So this is career-wide, career-long stats here. Your top scramblers on fast POA greens in their career. No timeline here. Aaron Baddeley, Jonathan Bird, Webb Simpson, Seamus Power, Danny Willett, Matthew NeSmith, Maverick McNeely, Brian Stewart, Uncle Luke, and Brian Gay. So Luke Donald has been up there on basically every single short game metric that we have looked at, whether it's around the green or putting on fast POA. I don't remember if he was top 10 for 3-putt avoidance on fast POA, but he was certainly pretty high up there. There's a look at some of your best scramblers in their career on fast POA greens. And again, I'm going with career because on fast POA greens, the largest amount is 93. Yes, that's a whole lot, but if we wanted to try to bring this in to, say, 2021, we would have very few rounds. Very few rounds. So I actually found that out doing a lot of the research this morning, that for POA, you kind of just need to grab it all. Again, this is just 2021 forward. There's only 20 rounds at top. So that's why I'm grabbing all. All right. Last thing, let's look at some proximity. We definitely want to scrutinize some proximity. Let me remove the green filters. For proximity, I'm not going to look at short course for a couple of different reasons. One, not every course has proximity numbers if they're international, whether that be, say, the Mayakoba, the Zozo, Bermuda, all of those type of events. We don't have shot link. We also don't get shot link for tournaments like the Pebble Beach on the alternate courses. So I am going to go back all the way to the beginning of 2022, but I'm not going to put any filter as opposed in, say short courses or whatnot. Let's just take a look at proximity, and I'll just do a little bit of foreshadowing there. But like I said, let's go back and look at some proximity numbers from these prior leaderboards. Top 15. The majority of approach shots come from 100 to 125 here by a significant amount. So we're going to see if that has any bearing on upper leaderboard success. So we look here. Well, it doesn't look like a whole lot, especially for players in the top 10. Take a look at your winner. That is a massive number. More than half of his proximity total came from that specific range. Now, he wasn't the leader in it, but more than half came from that range. So that's important to note. But I'll sort again on this leaderboard. Top 15. Let's see. What do we have here? We got a pretty big number in total procs, but I don't see that being a huge factor this week. 75 to 100 actually looks pretty strong with the small amounts here. 150 to 175 up here, pretty strong. Again, like the 100 to 125, you had a decent run of cut makers. Okay, with the exception of your one miscut from David Skins, this was actually pretty darn good now that I look at it. You have a clunker of a made cut from Ben Coles, but really it's okay. Grayson Sig was middling. Jason Day was a top 25. Troy Merritt was a top 5. Okay, it's not too bad. It's not necessarily as strong as perhaps that chart would make you want to think, but it's certainly not nothing. 2021, we'll take a look at proximity. Again, just the top 15 due to ties. A little more scattered in terms of where the red is, but about the same number. If we sort on it, yeah, again, some decent success, I would say. Nothing major, but a decent amount of success here. Now, your winner in 2021, Daniel Berger, was looking like he pretty much devoured the par 5s. That's still a pretty significant number in terms of the 100 to 125. Let's go 2020. One more year. Proximity. So your winner this year was negative, Nick Taylor. This is the top 17. Again, it just doesn't look strong from the eye test. But you sort on it, you got some, again, maybe nothing that's inspiring, but you got a 50th, and then everything else is middling and better. So a decent amount of correlation, I would say, for the 100 to 125. So your top performers on approach shots coming from 100 to 125 yards since the start of 2022 have been Tom Hoagie Austin Cook, Camilo Villegas, Brennan Todd, Robert Garrigus, Samuel No, Scott Stallings, Jordan Spieth, Davis Thompson, David Lipsky, and Brian Stewart. Jordan Spieth, former champion here. Like I said, I think Brendan Todd has played this event very well. Of course, Tom Hoge, your defending champion. All right, so there's some correlation here, but I mean, Tom Hoge is just very good in proximity in general. David Lipsky, darn good in especially the short proximities, which remember, there's quite a bit of an emphasis on 350 to 400 yard par 4s, so perhaps 75 to 100 could be something as well. But I'm thinking it's the 100 to 125. All right, let's go to par 3s. I'm going to reset the filters here. Let's just go to the beginning of the PGA Tour season, so back to the Fortinet. 2022 and par 3s, and we're doing okay on time. I'll try to speed it up a little bit because there's still a lot in Excel. Par 3s, Tom Hoge played them very darn well. He wasn't your best, but he did play them pretty darn well. His range was the 200 to 225 that you see here. I think they're going to be a little bit more important than maybe what they're showing. Again, top 15. Only 2 were negative, so that is at least a strong start in that statement. You've got par 3s at every single range here. So 2.7, 2.6, 3.1, 3.7, 1.4. But really, there's nothing that looks, like direct correlation. This is pretty strong, and then you get those 3 missed cuts. So, my inclination is going to be par 3s just in totality. Again, top 15 just due to ties. Again, not a whole lot of negative when they are negative, but I'm seeing like a 175 to 200 from 2021. Okay, look at this. Look at this par 3 correlation. Other than Uncle Luke, who missed the cut, that's some pretty damn strong correlation here. 2nd, 7th, 7th, 1st, 7th, 3rd. Another top 20 in here. Another top 20 up there. That's pretty darn strong. 3.6, 1.2, that's nothing. That's ignore worthy, I should say. A 3.3, that's pretty darn strong. A 2.8, a little less strong. So 175 to 200 was dominant in 2021. Lastly, we'll take a look at 2020. Again, your winner was pretty darn solid, Adam. Led the field in par 3 performance. He looks like he did it, and again, in these main 2 lengths here. So I'm going to skip and see 3.9. You do have a couple. You have all or nothing basically in here. Miscut or top 5, top 15, miscut, 3rd, miscuts, winners. So all or nothing there. And a 2.3. Now this is much more consistent, even including the miscut from Richie Wierenski. That's pretty strong. So I would say 2 of the 3 years have been 200 to 225. Okay. So we come back to this year's field. I'm going to sort on par 3s, and we'll take a look at the 2 main links, what I think. Your top par 3 performers since the start of this PGA Tour season, dating back to the Fortinet: Chesson Hadley, Matthew NeSmith, Grayson Sigg, Aaron Baddeley, Ben On, William McGirt, Chris Stroud, Justin Rose, Fabian Gomez, and Russell Knox. Okay, so pay particular attention to Chris Stroud. He's top 10 in both of the links that seemingly are the most important here. Chesson Hadley, 8th and 1st. Aaron Baddeley's top 30 in both. That's nothing to be ashamed about. When you're talking a field of 156, you're in the top 30. You're in the top 20% for both. That's reasonable, just fine. But really, it looks like players are very good at one and poor at another. Maybe an honorable mention to Grayson Sigg falling just outside the top 30, 4th and 33rd for the two individual lengths. I think if you want to focus a length of par 3, it's the 200 to 225, but I'm just going to be doing par 3s in total. Par 4s, let's move to those. I can't stress it enough. We have to scroll down to, so every single player in the top 32 was positive in terms of strokes gained par 4. It's just one of the most important statistics on the PGA Tour. Only 2 were negative in 350 to 400, and 1 was slightly negative. 1 was really bad. Okay. Let's see. A 3.1 with some pretty strong correlation up here. A 5.6. A little less correlation, but a huge number there. 6.1, and you got a lot there before you have to hit a missed cut. You got a lot there before you hit a missed cut. 400 to 450. 5.1, boy, that's strong too. For as much as I thought it was going to be the 350 to 4, last year looks like it was the longer lengths of the par 4s. All right, well, 2021. Again, just everybody inside the top 20, everybody inside the top 25, positive in terms of strokes gained par 4. Now look at the 350 to 4 here, very strong. Only 3 were negative. It took a little while to get to them. You have a 2.7, not really all that noteworthy. Look at all the missed cuts there. 5.7, and that is very, very strong there. 5.1, again, pretty strong. And a 4.0 with less strong. Okay. So I'm going to skip 2020 just because we're running a little short on time and we need to get to Microsoft Excel. It's definitely these two ranges. I still think it's 350 to 400, but perhaps the 400 to 450 are making a case to be more worthy of consideration. So, since the start of this PGA Tour season, your top performers on all par 4s have been Thomas Detry, Maverick McNeely, Tom Hoge, S.H. Kim, Joel Damon, Ben Griffin, Denny McCarthy, Andrew Putnam, Aaron Baddeley, and Matt Kuchar. If you want to look at specific lengths, Thomas Detry, 3rd and 1st, that is immaculate. Maverick McNeely's top 30 in both. Tom Hoge is 15th exactly on both lengths, so that's good. Ben Griffin's top 20 in both. Denny McCarthy's top 20 in both. Seamus Power's top 25 in both. Now, Alex Smalley is the best from 350 to 4, but he's very, very bad. I was going to say very poor, but it's very bad from 400 to 450. Okay. DA points, although it's only 2 rounds, so take that with a little bit of grain of salt. Brian Gay, again, only 6 rounds, but he's generally better at shorter par 4s. And then lastly, let's look at par 5s very, very quickly. There. Par 5 performance, we highlight, again, the top 15. Only 2 were negative. Some pretty big numbers in here. Joel Damon, a 9.4. Very big number there. A 6.5, that's pretty strong, other than the miscut from Matt Jones. A 4.2. You got a couple of miscuts and then a lot of good performance. So kind of leaning towards the 500 to 550 from last year's leaderboard, and then from 2 years ago, again, everybody in the top 15 was positive in terms of strokes gained par 5. So looking like they're going to be more important than I thought they were going to be last night. 500 to 550. Oh my. Oh my. Look at that correlation there for the 500 to 550 par 5s. I mean, yes, you have a middling from Bo Hostler, middling from Hank Lebioda. Literally everybody else that I've highlighted there is 21st or better. Ooh, that's strong. And then a 4.8. Yeah, 500 to 550. And you see there's really only 2 lengths here for the entirety of the tournament. So with that, I'm just going to look at 500 to 550, I think. Your top par 5 performers from 500 to 550 yards since the start of the PGA Tour season have been Davis Thompson, Peter Malnati, Andrew Putnam, Seamus Power, Matt Kuchar, Kevin Yu, Matthew Neesmith, Garrick Higo, Dean Burmester, and Vincent Norman. Let's see. Higo is good at both lengths here. Davis Thompson's good at both lengths. Dean Burmester is good at both lengths if you don't want to ignore the 550 to 600. Honorable mention to Keith Mitchell. 2 more honorable mentions here, Victor Hovland and Taylor Pendrith. But I'm pretty sure I'm just going to be focusing on the 500 to 550 for par 5s. All right, let's go to Microsoft Excel. And again, we're going to look at the comparison course spreadsheet that I create. You see strokes gained approach and strokes gained putting as we saw graphically, at least in terms of the raw numbers. However, looking at evaluation versus other courses, around the green is actually the biggest compared to other courses. Again, makes a lot of sense because these greens are so small. Now that is an outlier. That's maybe an outlier, but you got a pretty decent one there. Yeah, that's pretty high. And this is a low outlier. So how does it look now? Yeah, more balanced, I suppose. I'm going to put a lot of weight into POA putting for my mixed condition model, just due to the fact that all 3 courses are POA. Driving statistics, I think we settled that they were greens mostly. Pretty consistent, to be fair. 3.4 is the average. The highest of a 3.8 and a low of a 3.05, so fairly consistent. What's it look like compared to other courses? Fairways 6%, yeah. Greens 8%, almost 9%. Good drives gained are slightly under. So looking like we're going to do some greens when it is on short courses. Might also do some scrambling, perhaps. Thinking about that. We move to scoring. Both of them are more important than the average full field course, but bogeys is certainly the highlight. Let's see if we can find something here. That's a pretty low outlier. This is all over the place. You've got some low and some really high. That's why I still think I'm going to be looking at bogey avoidance. Is 23% more important versus 2% more important for birdies gained. I might have birdies or better gained, but it would be no more than 5%. Bogey avoidance, I'm thinking probably 10%, just like last week. Par 3s. We saw that it was these 2 lengths. Again, no surprise here. Total par 3s, I think, is what I'm going to use, but these 2 are the main lengths. Par 4s, again, I think it's going to be incorrect to ignore all par 4s, but your emphasis is here. 350 to 4 and 400 to 450. More emphasis on the 350 to 4. And then par 5s, I mean, we saw this directly from the prior leaderboards. All of the percentage of importance in par 5s is coming from this specific range. So that's where we're going to focus. And as far as proximity, as much as 75 to 100 maybe looks like it, it's The only one that's a huge positive, meaning more important, is the 100 to 125. The 200 plus is getting cut off. It's only 2% more important. So probably some 100 to 125. Normally I go to the early look file. Let's go to my mixed condition model from last year first, because I'm actually pretty curious to see what I did and to see if I need to adjust some things or whatnot. So right off the bat, well, first off, let's just kind of get a gander and see how it was. That is a withdrawal. That's a withdrawal. So don't think those are miscuts. Those are withdrawals. So really, fairly solid. There's my top 20. It looks like 1, 2, 5 of my top 20 missed the cut. So maybe a little bit on the high side, but I had the winner. He was 5th. I had some pretty strong performances elsewhere in my top 20. I would say this is, on the better end of average. Patrick Cantlay being the number 1 player, he finishes 4th. Aforementioned Hoagie. Justin Rose didn't play all that well. Mito missed the cut. Cameron Tringali missed the cut. But I had a lot of these middling finishes here, back into the top 10s, into the top 15s and top 20s. I feel like this was okay. It was okay. So 15% we're going to get back immediately. Not doing anything with strokes gained total, but you see the emphasis that I put on less than 7,200 or short courses. I did 15% on fast and lightning POA. I think that's a mistake. It probably just needs to be fast. But you see the emphasis I put there. Put 15% on greens. I don't see any reason why that would change. I did have quite a bit in terms of just total par 4s. I did put quite a bit in total par 5s. Okay. Approach was at 10%. I did focus on the bogeys as opposed to the birdies. I had the procs that we're talking about, and only 5% in par 3s. That probably needs to be risen a little bit. I'm going to sort this very quickly on the actual leaderboard, or how it shaked out. Shaked? Is that the word? How it shook out? English is clearly my strong suit. Yeah, I mean, other than Spieth and Hostler, like, there's a lot of correlation here in the strokes gained total on short courses. Oh my. Even with those 2 very poor performers leading into the tournament, that is an average of a 37. That's one of the lowest I've ever seen. So again, just a whole lot of emphasis on short courses. POA, not very high, 67. Okay. Greens, I think is going to be pretty important. That is a 61. Par 4s, 42. So very, very predictable last year. Hoagie and the approach wasn't very much. The bogeys was, you can see from all the green there. That was pretty strong. And over here, these metrics didn't make it to the mixed condition model, but they were certainly used in terms of tiebreakers. If I was either wagering a player or going to use a player in a lineup, look at the scrambling. The scrambling here is a 36. That is very low. And you see I was focused on the main ranges of par 4s and 5s we're talking about. 52, that's a little bit high, but we have a couple of very poor performers here, and these guys generally played 350 to 400 par 4s really well, and they played well that week. Now the 500 550 looks a little bit less. It's a 55 to a 52, so still not that bad. Okay, so definitely going to get 15% back here. Otherwise, we're looking at a lot of the same metrics from last year for a mixed condition model that produced decent results. Decent. I wouldn't say they're outstanding by any means, but I produced the winner in my top 5. If they're in my top 20, I consider it fairly successful in that regard. Not a lot of miscuts. A decent performance from the other cuts made. I think it's pretty good. I think it's okay. So with that, now let's go over to the early look file. Take a look at some of these key metrics. Who's been doing it the best in the last 5 years here at Pebble Beach, the Pro-Am. So we're going to sort first on putting. I just want to look at some putting. Yep. So again, with a lot of these players having just one round, they've shown that they at least like the greens or the look of the greens. But somebody like Troy Merritt, 4 for 4 with an average finish of 13th. Zach Blair, Brian Gay, Tom Hoagie, your defending champion. Matthew Neesmith, not a very good putter, puts the greens here at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am pretty well. McNeely makes a lot of sense. He's a California guy. Nate Lashley, Jonas Blixt. Okay. Let's take a look at greens and regulation. Absolutely. We want to look at that one. Who's been the best in the past 5 years at hitting greens and regulation, or greens and regulation gained? Taylor Pendrith was very good his 1 year. There's Russell Knox, who's played this event extremely well, 4 for 5. Sean O'Hare, 3 for 4. Kevin Streelman's played this event very well. Nick Taylor, your champion in 2019. Trey Mullinex has been good in that regard. Matthew Neesmith, Matt McNeely, Jordan Spieth, the former winner. Joseph Bramlett. So there's a few names in terms of greens, and I think that's going to be a pretty big factor this week. Let's look at bogey avoidance. Bogey avoidance, largest to smallest. All right. Kevin Streelman. Now, Ryan Moore, only 2 for 2, but is very good at the bogey avoidance. Again, Troy Merritt, Nick Taylor, former winner. Henrik Norlander, 2 for 2, with an average finish of basically a top 25. Ben Martin. Doug Gim. Now, his one made cut, I believe, is a top 10 here. So he's had one very good tournament and 2 pretty poor ones. So which Doug Gim are we going to get? Russell Knox, very good. Matthew Neesmith, Jordan Spieth. You're seeing these same names pop on these key metrics here. Matt McNeely, Luke Donald. Some middling performance. He's 2 for 4, but an average finish of 72nd is not strong. So, Let's take a look at 3 more. I want to look at the 350 to 400 par 4s. Actually, I just want to look at all par 4s, and we'll look as well at the specific links. So, all par 4s, Kevin Streelman, Troy Merritt, Scott Stallings has played this event very well. Again, there's Neesmith and Spieth. Lonto Griffin has played well. Nick Taylor, Andrew Putnam. Seems like this would be a very good fit for Andrew Putnam. Ben Martin, Tom Hoagie. Where are they doing their damage in terms of par 4s? We'll come down to Bo Hostler, who just happens to be 20th. That's a 1.2. It's a 1.7. So it's for these players, it's looking like it's 400 to 450. So I think there's probably merit to looking at both. Par 5s, we're absolutely just going to look at the 500 to 550, who has played those the best at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. 500 to 550. Okay, well, Smotherman was just 1 year. There's Matt Kuchar. Again, Jordan Spieth, Nick Taylor, Henrik Norlander, Sean O'Hare. Trying to find players that have actually been really good here. McNeely, Russell Knox, Lonto Griffin, Ryan Moore, Troy Merritt. Surprising to see Fabian Gomez is somewhat high in terms. Well, I guess we had to scroll a little bit. But he is 0 for 4 here. Nate Lashley. There's Joel Damon. 4 for 4 in making the cut. All right, last one. Let's take a look at 100 to 125 procs and who has been the best in the past 5 years here, specifically at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And again, this is only going to be from 2 rounds at most each of those years because we don't have Shot Link for Monterey or Spyglass. But there's Hank Lebioda, 2 for 3, but the average finish is troubling. Harry Higgs, okay. There's Brendan Todd I talked about. I thought he would have played it more, but it's middling success. Matthew Neesmith, Nate Lashley. There's Tom Hoagie, your defending champion. Kuchar. Aaron Baddeley surprisingly hadn't played this all that well, despite being very good on Poa Green. So, okay. There's Russell Knox. Ryan Armour's been okay. Putnam. Sun Kang's been okay here. So, all right. I'll resort this for the best average finishes. And I will sign off with that. So you can take a look at those numbers. Make some notes for your own purposes, for your research throughout the week. But that is going to do it for the Data Dive show tonight. Thanks to everybody who tunes in and watches, listens, and supports the channel. P for jumping in chat like you always do when you're able to catch the show live. Reminder that Wednesday night, the DFS Tactics show, we'll definitely take a look at Windfinder and try to figure out our best pivots and fades, who perhaps maybe are some 6K plays that we want to target. Friday night will be the Friday Night Chill stream. Will be exactly the same as it was for the American Express. So I'm just going to be doing round 3 showdown Friday night, since this is a 54-hole cut. No weekend golf in that regard. I'm just going to be looking at round 3 showdown for Friday night. And then reach out with any questions you have on wagers. Let me know in the comments if you have any wagers out there already. James, for jumping in chat there right at the end. Glad you enjoyed the show. But let me know in the comments. Do you have any wagers? What are you looking for in terms of lineups for Wednesday night? Are there any players that are going off your radar senses, your spidey senses are going off on? So let me know in the comments. And also, if you think you know some players who fit with the research that I put forward over on Twitter and Instagram, feel free to put those names out. Either reply on social media or put it in the comments. I'd be interested to see who can perhaps guess some of those players. But again, P and James, thanks for jumping into chat. Thanks to everybody who supports the channel, subscribes, likes the videos, comments. I always appreciate it. For any of the wagers you've made so far for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, for any of the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.